Hi, my name is Nicholas Pinto, and welcome to this week's module video. DNA fingerprinting has three different types: VNTR analysis, STR analysis, and microsatellite region analysis, and can be used for paternity testing, identifying bodies, or in criminal investigations. VNTR analysis is based on the differences in the number of repeats of a string of bases in one's genome, and the three main components are PCR, gel electrophoresis, and analysis, all of which we will discuss more in the rest of the video. PCR is a method for replicating strands of DNA to produce millions or billions of copies, facilitating analysis and visualization. The main steps of PCR are denaturing DNA, annealing primers onto the DNA, and adding on nucleotides using polymerase under the 3' end of the primers, and repeating this process results in the duplication of DNA to millions and billions of copies. Gel electrophoresis allows us to identify the alleles in an individual's genome through the movement of small bits of DNA towards the positively charged pole in a gel matrix compared to the larger molecules of DNA, which will stay behind. The case study for this video is investigating the murder of our longtime protagonist, Little Boy. Right now, what we know about Little Boy's case is that he fell down or was pushed down a well to his death, and the only evidence left behind was a handful of hairs on his old, rarely washed shirt. The prime suspects in this case are Mr. Jones, his daughter Sally Jones, Nick, and Aleph, all of whom have various reasons for wanting to kill Little Boy, centering on his annoying behavior. On screen now are the results of the gel electrophoresis for each of the individuals and the sample taken from the scene for the first VNTR locus. From the jump, we can tell that the sample could not have been from Little Boy because his two spots in the gel do not match up with that of the sample, showing that he does not share the same alleles. The same is true for Mr. Jones, who shares one allele at this locus in common with the sample, but his other allele does not match the sample's second allele. And again, the same can be said for Sally Jones, who shares one allele with the sample but not the other, thus eliminating her as a suspect. On the other hand, both Nick and Aleph match up with the sample at both the first allele and the second allele. Since they both match with the sample and neither can be ruled out as suspects, we will have to examine the second locus to figure out who the murderer was. Now we are looking at the second locus. We can skip over Little Boy, Mr. Jones, and Sally Jones, since we know that they cannot be suspects from the first locus. Now comparing Nick and Aleph, we can see that Nick does not share any alleles with the sample at this locus. On the other hand, we can see that Aleph yet again shares both alleles with the sample. Now reflecting on some of the evidence, we can begin to conclude who killed Little Boy. To recap, the alleles of the suspect must match the alleles of the sample at both loci for us not to be able to eliminate them as the murderer. We must also keep in mind that any conclusion that we make is tentative and could be due to other factors besides them being the actual murderer. That said, all available evidence points to Aleph as the murderer of Little Boy. Here are my sources.